is an honor and pleasure to introduce Jean-Martin Fortier, and he's going to be speaking about keys to profitability in the market garden. So, thank you guys.
We'll go like this. Hey, are you guys okay? Is this good enough with the sound?
Yes.
All right, I think we have an hour and a half, something like that together, and I definitely want to take at least 15, 20 to go Q&A. Because I want to engage with you all, and I want to make sure that some of the things that I might be helpful with we'll cover together. I don't have a lot of answers about how to grow in the desert because I live in the Northeast, very different climate. But I do have a lot of experience in farming, in market gardening. I've been doing this for a long time. I'll have the opportunity, the chance to share my story with you all this afternoon. So I won't go through it this morning, and we'll kind of jump right into market gardening and some of the keys to really help you take it to the next level. I can quickly tell you that I started farming when I was 22, 23, I think. I know some of you in the room have started around that time. I'm now 46, will be 47 pretty soon, so it's been a while. I farmed my home farm. It's a less than 2 acre farm for 10 plus year, and then I started a training farm where I trained 10 market gardeners on a pretty intense level for 2 years. It was like 2 years I had them, and then they would move on. I did that for 7 years, and then last year I started another project, which is now what I do. I run a farm-to-table restaurant, and I garden in there. And so I've seen a lot of things, and I have a lot of experience to share with you all, so I want to make sure that at the end we open up for questions. Anything before we start? A question, comment? Just to... Oh, wow! That's great. I love that. No, I'm not a YouTube channel. I'm a real person with a real heart. I can tell you, if you guys are following me on social media, there's one thing. I really care a lot about all of this. I really do. And one of the reasons I think that I'm so passionate is because I get to travel. I get invited to places like these, and I meet people like you, and there's people like us everywhere. And but we don't feel it, we don't see it, because first of all, we're perhaps in our farm and we're really struggling and we're really working hard, or we're with our colleagues, and it's rare that we come together. So you guys are all coming together today, that's amazing. But there's a lot of communities that are coming together like this everywhere in the world, and we're all passionate about making a dent and creating an alternative narrative to the current food system. And let's not go into that, because I can talk for hours about this. Let's go really into the technicalities of market gardening. Okay? So the presentation, if you guys want to have it, you can just take a picture of this. The presentation will be in your inbox. I work with the Market Gardener Institute. We develop the master class, and we teach, yeah, she says it's awesome. We teach growers, from all over how to take market gardening to the next level. You guys will get 50% off the cost of the master class. It's definitely worth it, definitely a good deal. I think all the information will be on there, so check that out, okay? I want to start with a question that I'm asking you all. What is keeping you, your farm, from making more cash, more money? And it's a question. So I want you guys to take the time to perhaps think about it, write it down on a piece of paper. We might go over some of these things at the end of the workshop. So 1 minute to think about it, 2 minutes. What's holding you from making more money on the farm? Because money is an important, it's not the only one, but it's an important aspect of farming. Does anyone wants to share one thing that he's thinking about? I'm thinking about money on the farm. I'd love to hear a comment. Yes.
Being afraid of walking into some restaurant or other place and saying, "Oh, my fruit."
Yeah. So just kind of like hustling and going to meet people. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's like the marketing aspect, like
Mhm.
people wanting the product that you're, trying to do. So
Yeah. Marketing.
Yeah, I definitely say that.
Anyone else? Yes.
High cost of inputs, equipment, and supplies.
Yeah. So cost of production, cost of goods sold. It's definitely, it's part of the equation. There's sales, but there's also costs. And yes.
Finding and keeping reliable help.
Reliable help. Yes. It's a big part of the project. You get good help, they leave.
Yes.
Usually they start their own farms. Anyone else? Yes.
So in the desert, water
Well,
availability
yeah.
and cost, and
Yeah.
water use efficiency is a big problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really, kind of the first time that I come in the summer here, and I was at the bar with the visitors, and I was like, wow, this is very interesting. Yeah, water, definitely shortages of water, making sure that you have the right systems to be able to, grow the crops. A few others?
Enough shade for our little seedlings.
Mhm.
Shade's another problem.
Shades. Yeah, I've been following Steadfast Farm for quite a few years, and I think they're pretty good with that. They're definitely the reference, in my opinion. Shade cloths. Last one? The weather? Okay. Yeah, you should try Quebec in the winter. That's pretty harsh too. Yeah, weather, it's extreme weather. It's climate change. We're entering the definite era of climate change, which what it means, in my opinion, is like we'll go in yo-yo weather. It's going to be super hot, super cold, late frost, early frost. It's going to be changing all the time. So the good news is that small farms, we're much better equipped to adapt ourselves than bigger farms. Like big farms, imagine trying to put a row cover on 100 acres. It's impossible. Or even to irrigate 100 acres. It's not the same as 2 acres. So, we have the scale to adapt better. And I do also think that we have the market opportunities. Like there's a lot of people that want to eat local foods. It's growing, the numbers are growing, and then it's just a matter of being there at the right time with the right produce, which is really what I want to talk about today. So there's all sorts of things that we could go over with regards to how to farm. We can go in details about exactly how to grow a strawberry plant, get good yields, bring it to market. I could spend an hour on that. But in my opinion, one of the most important part of making it work on the farm is just like understanding, what to grow, like what crops and why these crops, and when to grow them, and how much of these crops. Getting that right. What, when, and in what quantities is just as important as how to grow it. Okay, so that's what we're going to go over today. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the 3 areas where I want to go is I want to make sure that I communicate with you all how to target profitable crops. Growing leeks is not the same thing as growing Hakurei turnips, which is not the same thing as growing heirloom tomatoes. Okay, so let's go understand all of this together. I'll propose you 8 to 12 profitable crops for market gardening. There's high yields, high successions crop. How to plan for these crops. Planning is a big part of the project. And how to maximize the space that you have on your small acreage. Okay? So this is what we'll look into today. If you have questions, just ask. It's a small enough group. There's also the number of the slides, so if you have questions that you can write it down with the number of the slide, and we can come back to it later. Okay? So targeting which crop to grow. Again, like it could be personal preferences, like I like to grow leeks, or I like to grow okra, or I like to grow this. But honestly, if we're talking about how to make the garden or the market garden or the farm profitable, you need to kind of figure out the numbers. You should be growing the crops that are the most lucrative crops to grow, in my opinion. And how do you measure that? So in market gardening, we have, certain things that we look at. This is a formula that I'm, inviting you to kind of figure out on your own. But it's revenues divided by time of day in the field, divided by the bed space that the crop occupies. And that gives you a ratio, and then you compare your crops to that. We'll look into that. How fast the crop grows, so you can plant successions. So, again, I have nothing against leeks. I love leeks. It's one of my favorite crops, but it's a crop that's there like 100, 120 days. And when you calculate a 100-foot bed of leeks, how much money you generate, it's the same amount of money as Huckerite turnips. But Huckerite turnips you'll do in 30 days. You can almost do 3 times Huckerite turnips in one bed if you're flipping it compared to leeks. So in that way, it's kind of like turnips, 30 days, Japanese Huckerite turnips, 3 times as profitable as leeks. Seasonality, obviously, here we're in a different context than back home, but it's kind of the same thing. We have hard winters, you have hard summers. It's kind of reverse. A popularity at your markets. If I grow okra back home, I don't think no one will buy it. I don't know here what's specific to Arizona. And one thing that I don't measure is cost of production. Okay? And I'll go over that. So this is a formula, and it's really interesting to look at the crops in that way. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this kind of understanding of looking at the potential. When we're talking about market gardening, we're talking about, quarter acre, half acre, 2 acres, 3 acres. 4 acres is becoming a big market garden. I've farmed, 10 acre in market gardening style because I was teaching it. And, there's a point where the scale, it's just better to mechanize the farm. But the bed, the standardized bed length, I hope you guys are all familiar with that concept, becomes a really nice unit of measure on the farm. If all your beds are the same size, 50 feet, 100 foot, whatever, it's really easy to measure the amount of salad heads that you'll get from one bed, or broccoli, or whatever. And then from there, you can estimate the revenue that you'll make with your current selling price, and then you can evaluate how much a bed is worth of each. And that's a really good measure of calculating profitability on which crop to grow. Okay? Does that make sense? Is that clear for everyone?
I have a question.
Yes.
So your 44 days over there, is that included from the seeding or like transplanting?
Yeah, it's always from transplanting to harvest, because we value the time that the crop occupies bed space because we're trying to maximize that. Okay, one of the key principles of market gardening is the smaller the better, but you need to have a lot of turnovers. So you're double, triple cropping, you're having 2, 3, 4, 5 successions per year per bed. That's how you maximize your space. That's how you maximize your irrigation setup, because you don't need to have a bigger one to spread out. You just maximize what you have. So we're always measuring in terms of when the crop gets into the soil and when it leaves. That's what we measure. So these are this is a formula that you can use with numbers that you can get on your farm with your data. Okay. Quick crops, 60 days or less. think it's the same DTM here, pretty sure. Most of these seeds. But obviously, crops that are there, like seeded and then harvested in less than 60 days. 60 days is a reach. Like, 40 day, 50 day, 60 day. Like, you want to get as much as you want of these crops into your planting calendar, because again, you can maximize your space that way. And most of these crops, sometimes they're easier. If there's a crop failure, you can quickly turn around and plant some more. It's not to plant just that, but that's definitely one part of the equation. Does that make sense for everyone? Am I losing you all? Is this interesting? Is this? I just want to make sure that I'm not kind of completely talking about something that you guys is all foreign to. Yes? Make sense, Eric? We're good. Okay. Okay, seasonality is also really important because, depending on the weather pattern, especially, some crops will grow better in the spring and the fall. And so that's something to really keep in mind. I don't need to school you and educate you on that. It's pretty obvious. But there's a lot of crops that, arugula doesn't grow well when it gets too warm. So you need to really grow it in the shoulder seasons. There's a lot of cabbages. I'm sure that it's an issue here to grow great cabbage. Like, there's cool weather crop that you need to grow in the right windows. And, obviously, there's a lot of experienced seasoned growers in this room. If you're struggling with that, you should ask them, which are the best time to grow these crops here. And popularity is the same. Depending on your markets, there's crops that are going to be super popular and crops that won't be so much. In market gardening, the name of the game is to try to avoid storage crops. Okay? Market gardening, you're selling fresh vegetables that was harvested the day before. So if you're selling carrots, you're selling bunch carrots. If you're selling beets, you're selling bunched beet, because you have a premium price for the fact that it's freshly harvested. And the reason why, again, I say this, we're kind of not growing storage crops, is because bigger mechanized farms are much better equipped to do that. So when you're harvesting potatoes with a pitchfork, and you're brushing your potatoes, and you're going to farmer's market with your potatoes, and you're selling them as fresh potatoes, it's kind of hard to get a better price than the other guy that has a mechanical harvester, the whole fully equipment line to brush and wash the potatoes. They come in 50-pound bags. It's just like you're not competitive. So we're targeting other crops. I'll show you these crops. But that's definitely something to keep in mind. All of this will come down to doing a game plan. Okay, so that's why I'm going through these steps. And again, what I don't measure, which I really never have, is the total amount of time that I'll spend on a crop, and the exact amount of money that I'm spending to grow the crop. Is it to buy compost or amendment? Is it to get a specific insect net for that crop? Is it to, whatever it is that the crop would involve? Like, I've never, and I wouldn't, and I won't do the work of measuring the cost to grow, Huckeri turnips 30 days. And I won't do that for tomatoes also. Any idea why? It's not something that I measure or factor in.
Diversity?
Okay, diversity?
Diversification of crops.
Yes, that's a big part of it. Market gardening is not about specializing in a few crops where you're really trying to fill a market niche with a couple of crops, where you really would specialize, really get the right equipment. You're growing 30, 40, 50, 60 different crops. And at your booth, I wish I had pictures of my booth. They're really nice. But you have the whole array of crops, because you're selling everything directly to consumers, and the consumers, they'll buy a little bit of everything. and then you switch to another client, same thing. And so in a day, anyone that's market gardening will tell you they're spending a little bit of time on this crop, a little bit of time on that crop, a little bit of time on that crop. It's like you're spending so much time on all these different crops. In the end, it's all the same. And the time that's required to really measure, because if you're measuring something, it's because you want to manage it. That's the thing. So if you start measuring how much time that you're putting in certain crops, you're spending time measuring it too. And the time is the limiting factor on farms. Like, we don't have that much time. So I don't really want to know how much time or money I'm investing in tomatoes or in Hackerai turnip. For me, it's kind of spread out across the board. Does that make sense, or is that kind of counterintuitive for people? Yes.
So are you measuring the total amount that you spend on all of them?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't think I haven't included it in the slideshow for today, but at the Market Gardener Institute, we've started, because we're working with so many farms, we've started to have budgets of different farms and profiles. And it's really interesting how, when we're using the same kind of accounting lines, we can really two different farms that are farming an acre or 2 acres that have pretty much the same amount of clients. We can see ratios and compare, and that's something that is getting interesting, because then you compare if your farm is more efficient than another one. But with regards to vegetables, in my opinion, you're just better off to learn how to grow that crop the most efficient way possible and teach that to your crew. That's the easiest way to, yes. It's labor for the farm. It's a line in my spreadsheet. It's the wage that I've paid to everyone in a week, in a day, in a month, in a year. It's all the salaries that are paid out. So that's my wage. That's my cost of. Does that make sense? Usually on a market garden that is pretty productive, it's less than 50%. Ideally 35%. That's really the target. That's what I can tell you from all these farms that we've been kind of studying. Is like, if you can get your let's say it's 2 acres, let's say it's 200,000 yearly sales, let's say, and you have experience, you have good markets, you have teams that know what they're doing. Perhaps they're following the master class that's really helpful to teach others how to do things. That you can watch a video, you can instruct them that way. If things are going pretty in the right way, it's 35% of cost of goods sold, meaning you're buying compost, you're buying insect nets, fuel, whatever, everything that's involved. 35% more or less salaries, and 35% in your pocket. That's like the pretty ideal scenario. So, yes?
So in your assessing of which crops are the most profitable for you, but you're not really including in that calculus the money inputs, right? You're looking at how much revenue it's generating and how many successions, how often you can turn the beds.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so on your list here then, are these general categories like under spinach, could that be like Asian greens or some other kind of greens? Yes,
it's if they fit these lines. And again, like, it's so funny, like I've been doing market gardening for more than 20 years. And so for me this is really obvious. But for a lot of people, it isn't. So we go back to basics, we explain these things. But in a nutshell, if I were to choose, 8 to 10 crops to start with, these would be the crops that I would do. Okay? and rating them using the metrics that we just covered, giving numbers, you see how these crops rate. So I guess what I'm doing here is I'm introducing to you a somewhat of a framework of how to look at crops, which one are more profitable to others. And what I'm trying to do is explain why, but this is what you should be using in your context. Because perhaps back home, spinach is super popular, perhaps here it isn't. So that number would go down. Perhaps some DTMs are different here because of weather pattern. I don't know. But this is what I would recommend kind of using, and then you could go over all of your crops and kind of do that. And then that would give you a pretty good idea of if you're growing the crops that are more profitable. Okay? Does that make sense? Does it? Okay, yes.
Another quick question. Does the rating system include the labor required, not just in the production, but processing of it?
No, labor is spread out.
Okay. No, but I mean like these are, you got beets, carrots, and radishes. Those are all root vegetables that require a fair amount of cleaning and bunching and all that other stuff.
Yeah. Greenhouse tomatoes require a lot of work too. So it's just again, we've done these with the numbers of cost of production, like with labor, and it just doesn't make any sense. You look at the number and it doesn't, this is simpler, and I know from intuition that this works because I've been doing this all these years, but that's a smart way to establish crops. So again, you don't need to follow this. You could decide to measure your cost of production, but again, remember, measuring exactly how much time, how much money you're investing in each of these crops is a lot of time, and time that you perhaps should be putting on just growing more, or getting your fields cleaner, or whatever, doing a pep talk with your team. Okay, does that make sense? So we're moving on. I want to talk quickly about some of these crops. Again, for a lot of the growers in the room, this is all new. Some growers in the room, this isn't new, but for others it might be. Like radishes, I don't know how radishes grow here. It's probably when it gets too hot. It's. Tell me about radishes. We're good?
We're good.
Fast, effective. People like radishes. They buy them. It's a real easy crop to grow. It's a real money maker. Okay. So, for me, it's really a no-brainer. And I try to, and it's a great color. There's different colors. So when you have your booth, you can have them in great colors. It's a really, for me, that's a no-brainer. Salad mix. I've made my career out of growing salad mix. I learned farming in New Mexico under the salad king of Santa Fe. Richard Bélanger, who's French-Canadian, farming in Santa Fe, in Abiquiu actually. And he was growing the best salad mix ever. And people would line up to buy a salad mix. And, came back from New Mexico to Quebec and started to grow salad mix, washing it in an old washing machine, spin drying it there, and that's what we've been doing all these years. Super popular crop. Obviously here with the climate, with the heat, there's definitely challenges there, but salad mix people eat a lot, so it's a popular crop. Yeah.
Does the number of the store change for indoor growing or hydroponic growing?
I've never done the hydroponic growing, so I'm not an expert at that. I would not be your best.
But it's all soil.
It's all soil. Yeah, it's all soil. Arugula, we talked about it. Arugula also, people, they demand it. And it's just about growing it and making sure that you have consistent yields and it's not too spicy. But it's definitely a favorite. Huckleberry turnips, everyone's familiar with these? Yes?
No, never heard of them.
Never heard of them?
No, sorry. Only person.
Yeah. It's one of these crops that when you introduce it to your clients or your customers are like, wow. These are really sweet, tender, juicy. beet. It's like it's an amazing, beautiful vegetable to grow. Really, you can make a lot of money growing these. Again, not so complicated. Just knowing when to plant them, the right spacings, and then making sure that you have the right watering and the right covering, probably with shade cloth. Mini lettuce heads. People will buy lettuce heads just like regularly, but the mini ones, they're really interesting because they'll buy a couple and then you can get the restaurants into them. They're more like of a gourmet, and you can just pack more into a bed. So these lettuce heads, they're interesting. And again, this is, I would imagine, I hope, Eric, you don't mind if I pick and choose you a lot. You grow these? Successful?
Same varieties.
Same varieties. Fresh beets. Ooh, it's a real money maker. Fresh beets. Like different kind of beets, different colors, not too big, kind of like really with the tops on, that's the challenge. But when you grow really nice beet consistently, like beets week after week after week after week at farmers market, you can really make a killing with these. It's like, I don't know if people eat as many beets as they buy, because I don't eat that many beets in a week. But for some reason, people are really appealed by them and they buy them because they're fresh, in my opinion. Okay. Fresh carrots, that's a real popular crop. Like, I used to say that we can never grow enough carrots. Then I did an action plan and I just planted more, and now we have enough carrots. But it's definitely one of these crops that when you start delivering week after week, nicely sized bunch carrots, it really makes a difference in overall sales. These are crops, again, they're not complicated to grow. It's just about following the right guidelines, having the right spacing for these crops, having the right cultivars, the right timing for all of it. Not complicated, but it should be, it should be one of the things that you're working on, is to have nice carrots. Not just like a couple of bumper crops, but like delivering fresh carrots every week. Okay? Spinach, we talked about. What I love about spinach is that we can almost grow it year-round back home. In the summer, when it gets warmer, we tend to not grow it as much because it bolts easily. But as soon as it's cooler, which I don't know how that translates here. Does it get cooler? Does it really get cooler? It does. But spinach has weight. It's nice. Many folks haven't tasted real spinach in a long time. They're getting the California stuff, which doesn't taste anything. When you get like really nice spinach that has some texture and some heaviness in it, it's really good, really flavorful, and you can really make good money with these. So I would say that these, obviously, they're very profitable, and I would recommend those. And again, a big part, especially if you're new to market gardening and you want to get into it, like I would focus on these crops, make sure that you're getting it right. And that's what I want to talk about now. What does it mean to get these crops right? Again, I'm not focusing on exactly how to grow them, because if you want to learn exactly how to grow them, I'm really inviting you to the master class. There's videos, tutorials, every step of the way showing you how to, start them in seedlings, how to transplant them, how to direct seed them, how to cultivate them efficiently, how to market them right. It's all there, okay? But, we have courses at the Institute that can help you with that. So check it out. But timing and just getting the other parts of growing the crop right is really what I want to talk about today. So it's not just about growing the crop is growing enough of it. Not too much, not too little, at the right timing for your markets. And really that's when you get good at market gardening, I believe. Because at first you're kind of learning how to grow it, then you get successful, then you're growing your markets, you're developing your clientele, you're doing all that. But at one point it's like making sure that every week you have consistency, delivering exactly what you need to your customers. That takes time, but it also is kind of a technique or strategies that you can acquire. And that's what I want to show you now. Okay? Does that make sense so far? Am I losing you? Is this interesting? Like, I was asked to come and give a technical workshop on how to do this, just so you know. Okay? So, I want to make sure that I'm pleasing you all, because in the end, that's what counts. Okay, so to sync all your crops so that it really delivers, you need to really understand succession planting, how that works. You need to create a program. The game plan, we call it. Okay, you need to have a game plan. And the game plan will change according to where you are, who you sell to, all these different variables that are yours. But a good grower, like Eric and his team, they have a good game plan going into their season, because they've been doing this for a while, and the game plan is good. So we'll talk about that. And also mapping out the whole sequence ahead of time. So when I start my season, I have, I've answered these questions. What am I growing and why? I went through that format. How much I need of each, because I've been doing this a long time, so I know how much I need to bring to the farmer's market, how much I need for my CSA, how much I need for the chefs that I work with, blah, blah, blah. And then I connect all of this into a game plan that tells me what to grow when. And then I create a map of my farm, and everything that I'll be growing is mapped out, and I can see the successions, and I can use efficiently the whole space of my market garden. And I have a map to start the season with. And the map is really my guideline of what I'm doing when. Okay? And so I've been using this technique for a long, long time, teaching this for a long, long, long time, pushing all of this to next level at the big farm where we were doing, 700, 800,000 a year of vegetable produced. These were markets of $15,000, in 2 days of fresh vegetables that we're delivering. And so all of this kind of strategic planning was really pushed, and we developed a software that's now available for you all to use that we'll kind of look into. Okay? So succession planting, what are we talking about? Is again, this whole idea of making sure that you're using your bed more than once. That's really the difference between market gardening and, small scale farming, where you'll have a field that's in cover crop, and then you'll come in, you'll plow it, you'll disc it a few times, and then you'll shape your soil either to beds or to rows, whatever. Then you'll do a crop, and then perhaps then it's going to go back to a cover crop. That's like more traditional organic farming. Market gardening, that's not what we do. We want to maximize space and time, and to get all the advantage of farming on a small acreage, but was still producing a lot. Okay? So I don't know if this all makes sense for you all, but that's really important. So one bed needs to be cropped more than once, ideally 3 times, minimum. And then later on, as your farm evolves, you want to get crop rotation in there, and you want to get a cover crop program also. But I won't go there today. Yes?
How do you maintain organic matter?
You add compost. You add compost. More compost than on bigger farms. Like, I don't know here, but in the Northeast, we're at like, you know, from 50 to 80 tons per acre of compost. And so that's how we get the organic matter in.
So you produce
We buy. We buy compost.
the residue from crops.
We leave them on the ground, but you know, it's hard to talk about everything that's market gardening related, but we don't have a tractor. We use a 2-wheel tractor like that. So making compost with a 2-wheel tractor is not ideal. So we buy compost. Okay? Make sure that you understand what this means, how this works. And so this is kind of the first introduction to Heirloom. So Heirloom is a software that's being developed by the Market Gardener Institute with the collaboration of all the growers that are in it. And then that's how you kind of start to create your program. So let's say you want to do fresh carrots, then you're going to put your data into it. I want to grow, you know, X bunches of carrots per week, and then I want to have X amount every week or every second week, depending on what you want to do. And so you kind of punch that in, and then that will help you estimate not just your yield, but also your income generated from that. Okay? So you start to see this. So because you're doing more than one planting, so the first planting will be on that date, the second planting will be on that date, the third planting will be on that date. We call those generations. There's perhaps another word for it here. I don't know in the slang, but generation is like Gen 1 is the planting on that date. Gen 2 is the second planting on that date, and they all connect to offer you continual harvest. That's the goal of this generation of plantings. Okay? Make sense? Still good? So you see the numbers, so it's really here. So every second week, that's going to be our schedule of planting, because we're going to be harvesting not just the whole bed one week, we're going to be harvesting that bed on a few weeks, 2 or 3. See, harvest window is 20 days. And that's how you stagger your plantings. It's actually the first time I give this presentation, so I don't know if it's really clear. I think I have a visual of this. So you'll see, these are all your different plantings. And this is from seed to first harvest. And this is the harvest period. Okay, so this is DTM. This is the planting date. This is the first harvest date. And that's how these successions, these generations, they stagger to offer you constant harvest on a program where you're planting every other week fresh carrots. Does that make sense? Whew, okay.
So I have a question. So in a crop, carrots are mostly have similar days to maturity. Some crops have kind of a wider range. You're assuming that the crop, you're planting all the same cultivar or similar cultivars that have the similar days to maturity. But
Well, you can play with however you want, but obviously if your goal is to connect, then you're better off with perhaps, you know, the same carrots. But you could go wild with this. This is just carrots, but you could have carrots. You could decide that, you know, Nantes carrots is one kind of crop, and then you'd have, I don't know, purple red dragon carrots as another crop that you also want to have every week or not. You might decide that you have, you know, purple carrots at the start of the season, and then that's it. You can decide what you want. But the idea here is to make them connect. Okay? It's really important. So, that's really, when you factor all these things in for all of your crops, So all of your planting dates for different generations of crops that are connecting in successions, and that's what you call the game plan, because it's really answering to the question of what you're planting, when, and in what quantities. And that game plan is really, again, like I can give you my game plan, but perhaps it wouldn't be relevant to where you're at. So there's some trial and error in all of that. But once you've nailed it, you become really precise with your farming. And then you're not into this model, because when I started farming, and this is true, like the models that I had, the growers were kind of growing a patch of something and harvesting what they could on it. That was it. That was the game plan. I'll grow a little bit of this, a little bit of that, some of this. Oh, I have an open field back there, I'll grow that. That was their game plan. And then they would harvest what was there, what they needed, nothing was covered with insect net, nothing was covered with row cover. It's just kind of like you just kind of roll the dice, plant, and then harvest what you could. Like market gardening, if you want to get good at it, you need to be more precise. And that cuts out a lot of the extra work of planting more than you need. It's extra seedlings, it's extra soil mix, it's extra labor cost. It's the more precise you get, the more efficient you are, the most profitable you get. That's really what I want to communicate here. Okay? And it's not so difficult to do, especially with a tool like this. You don't even need to own a farm. You can kind of create game plans and kind of see how it connects. Then the reality of planting all of this in the right timing, managing the crew so that everyone's on board, and then managing all the crises that are involved with farming, that's another story. But at least you start with a good plan. And that's really, really, really important. Okay? It's like if you wouldn't build a house without a plan. So you need to start your season with a plan. Okay? Yes?
Does this system allow you to plan in reverse? Let's say if you're doing your crop sequence for various holidays and wanting to have certain market mix of things available, can you pick a date or maybe 3 or 2 or 3
yes,
weeks?
you can reverse engineer everything.
Yeah, okay.
That's really how it works. Yes, you can. And that's how I started doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
Because I used to do this in spreadsheets, and I still do in some ways. So that's the other part, is once you've determined your sequence and your game plan, then you need to map it out. That's the extra step. The extra step is to put all your plantings in your field blocks. So this is a field block. These are all your beds. They're all the same size. We're standardizing the size of our field beds. That's one good reason why to do that. Okay? And then you have the dates are on the left sides. And so you'll have, can I point here? No. So you'll have your radishes that are planted mid-April. Again, these dates perhaps for you are off. You're in another calendar. And then they'll be harvested by early May. And we're planting 5 beds. And so that crop goes there. And then all these other crops, it becomes like a jigsaw puzzle, because this is all that you've established that you wanted to do to connect your crops for continuous harvest. And then the goal is to come and connect all of these into your field blocks. So these are the successions. So you have the first crop on these beds will be radishes. It's going to be followed by these, I don't remember what some is. That's another question. And then spinach. It's probably a mix of different beets and carrots. And then it connects with a third block that way. Okay? See here? Summer squash. Okay? So you'll have 3 crops per bed in a given year. And it's all mapped out. Does that make sense? Is this completely new to someone in the room? You guys have all seen this before? You guys all do this?
Well, farmers call it farm plan, and I see
Yep.
your application calls it game plan.
Yeah, farm planning, game planning. But just mapping out your season ahead of time is something that's really important. Because then you can make a lot of calls at that time. You could decide that your sprinkler lines, they water, I don't know, 4 beds, 6 beds, or 8 beds. So you might decide to group certain crops together because of the watering, or because of using insect nets. You know, instead of putting 2 beds of insect nets here and 2 beds of insect nets here, which would be like a lot of sandbags to put, you're just going to group them together and cover with 1 insect net. It's going to be 4 beds, less sandbags. So there's a lot of little things that you can see when you're doing this on paper or on the computer. You can manage a lot of the workload in the winter times or in the summertime period. Okay? Yes?
Are each of those 3 representing just a particular season, or is that their full year?
That's a full year.
So
It's a full, well, it's, yeah.
compared to
Yeah, for sure. Man, it gets cold fast back home. Yes?
So I have a question, and I can wait till later if it's not necessarily right now, but we specialize in medicinal herbs and culinary.
Yep.
So I was curious, what would be like the 4 most like profitable crops that you do if you do culinary and medicinal herbs?
I don't.
Okay.
It can be really helpful here because things change. But I'll estimate on a Monday I need to have 50 bunches of carrots for Tuesday market, for Thursday market, 75 for Saturday market, and I want to have 100 for Wednesday. So I'm planning to harvest, is it 225? I think that's the number. So 225 will be on my harvest list for that week. I'm harvesting only what I'm expecting to sell. Not more. If anything, I'll leave them in the field. And then from week to week, I know what I sold last week. I'm adjusting to, is it going to be raining at farmer's market, whatever. But I'm trying to harvest, and it's the same thing with chefs. When I work with chefs, on Monday, it's funny, like Eric's here because we were talking about this like so many moons ago. Send them a harvest tally, like, okay, what do you want this week? And then all the different restaurants would send their orders, aggregate them. Like, this guy wants 20 bunches of turnips, this guy wants 40, this guy wants 5. And then you have 20, 25 different restaurants pulling their orders, and then in the end you have 110 bunches to harvest. And so we're harvesting only what we're kind of selling, which is another really important piece of the puzzle. Yes?
I was wondering if this is outside of the scope and you're kind of broaching it, but it seems like there's so much that you're doing here on this side of it, and then you're also having to consider those markets and the demand for your product. And I'm wondering, there's all these pieces that you're having to tabulate. Are there models where there are opportunities to have that integration of the CSA, the culinary community, your farmer's market, kind of under a permanent roof, so that you don't have to do such advanced calculus about what the demand for your product is? But I'm just curious about that, because it seems like you have to do all this planning on the crops, but then also on the sales side.
Yeah, well, it's to have a fully integrated software that does it all. It's like the goal of Heirloom, but it's baby steps. The way we've done it in the past, we have harvest, tallies for restaurants. We know our CSA. We estimate for farmers market on a weekly basis, and we have to because things change. But then,
grower has to do this then.
yes, then we do 2 harvest lists, one on Tuesday, one on Friday. I recommend that you have 2 harvest days for your markets, and then everyone is harvesting on that day. But now with Heirloom, we have that built into the software. So you can kind of pre-populate what you need, readjust, and then it creates the harvest lists. And it's going to go further and further. It's being developed. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting software. So the last thing that we've always done, and now it's digitalized, is that from the chores, the task lists, we can also kind of populate these lists with growing things from the garden. Let's say, example, I want to go with a Fleckstein weeder on my salad mix, and I want to do that the second week after the crops were transplanted into the ground. So the Fleckstein weeder is like, it's kind of these are tines that when they hit the salad, it just bumps off and it scratches the surface, and all the tiny weeds get destroyed, and you can do it really, really fast. And for this to work, the crop needs to be about 2 weeks into the ground. After transplant, the root system is there. The crop is sturdy enough, but it's really efficient. But there's a timing to it. So I can put that also in the calendar and say, 2 weeks after transplant of that crop, I want this to happen. I want to put boron at week 6 and at week 12 of my peppers, because I don't want to have blossom end rot. So you can put all these different little tasks that otherwise clog up your brain, because there's so many things, so many variables to remember. You can put that also in your calendar. And so you're reminded every week of pretty much everything that you need to do on the farm. Plus, you see, you walk the fields, you see, you take notes. One thing that we did, and we still do on the farm, is we have a Monday morning quarterback meeting. Like, we go over, I'll prepare this, it's all on the board, then we'll go over with the team, everything, and then there's things that I haven't thought about. It's going to come up, and then we'll put it on the board. And then, after lunch, we have the complete workload of that given week on a board. And then it's just about dispatching who does what, where and when. And then we scratch things on the board, and then that's how we move from week to week. Just kind of like getting the job done. Make sense? Yes?
On your 2-acre farm, how many staff do you have employed to help?
5. Yeah. So there's 5 people in the field. Okay, so I hope I didn't lose you all here, but I can't stress this enough. Like, if you want to be profitable in farming and in market gardening, planning is so important. Makes such a big difference. And having the right tools properly planned is honestly just as important as good marketing, perhaps even more, and just as important as having the good growing techniques and strategies. Okay, so crop planning is a big part of the success of a farm. There's a lot of tools that are coming out. Heirloom is one. And the master class is the online course that we teach at the Institute. It goes over all the crops. Every step of the way, there's a video showing you how to do it. And it's a written information. It's really interesting, especially if you're starting out and you don't have something like that. Because when you start with a crew, it's really important with the crew that they know exactly how you want things to be done on the farm. Last thing you want is everybody kind of doing whatever. Like, if you're bunching carrots, it's how many carrots? What size carrots? How many twists of the rubber band? Like, all these details, they matter. Because in the end, you want to have a beautiful product at farmer's market. And there's a lot of people handling the vegetables. So what I've learned is that you really need to be concise and clear with the instructions of how to do things. And there's, we hear this a lot. There's a million ways to do to farm, something like that. But there's better ways. There's better ways to do certain things. More time efficient, more productive. And so that's what I did on the research farm. I tested and trialed all these different kind of ways of doing market gardening, and then we came up with a specific guideline for all these crops, and that's what we share with the masterclass. It's definitely worth it. Okay? And yeah, so I guess that's it for me. I don't know how much time I took, but I would happily talk about this or anything else related to farming. And yeah, that's it for me. First question.
In Heirloom, is there a library, a data library of all the different crops so that when you're populating your game plan, it automatically fills in?
Yeah, it's populated with the guidelines of the master class, but you can change them. You can override them with your spacing, with your density, with your DTM, with all your information. Yeah. Yes?
Does your software adjust for the time of year? Like in our winter, obviously our days are shorter.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's geolocated when you put in your farm, so it will know the weather of of the week, of the day. What it doesn't do now is have the DTM changed according to the weather, because that's like. But it's in the pipeline to imagine something like that, because sometimes you'll plant these carrots on the same date from year to year, and they won't be harvested on the same dates because of how weather changes. But I get the feeling the weather doesn't change that much here. Like back home, it changes every day. It's like, oh my God. We always say like, weather back home is like the choice of clothing. That's really what it is. Like sometimes you put 2 sweaters, sometimes it's 1 sweater, sometimes it's no sweater. It just changes all the time. Yes?
I'm going to try to cut flowers. Would that be something you could input?
Yeah, flowers are in Heirloom. Yeah. We have, in the Market Gardener Institute, we have a really nice flower course. It's the same thing, flowers, vegetables, like it's just about what you want to sell, when, and how much, and then you kind of plan for it. And then obviously when I say that, it sounds easy, but you still need to go and do the work. But, you get it. Yes?
Do you, in your course, do you have about like how to decipher pricing as far as when you're at the market?
Yeah, pricing, no, like the everything that we've touched on the Institute and that I've showed you a little bit today, it's really on producing. Marketing, all of that, pricing, it really depends. You'll be in some places, like I have this grower, I don't know, can I say a faux? Like this grower? Like I don't really like him. And I was looking at his prices, and I'm like, because he's always saying that he's so good because he's making X amount per acres. And I looked at his price list, and I was like, man, it's twice my prices. Like, you're asking $6 for a bunch of carrots. It's like, my God. So it really depends where you are. So the best way to do that is to kind of look at the growers in your area, what their prices are, and I would advise you to not undercut it, because you won't be very popular if you do that, unless unless you're not growing quality, which I'm sure that you wouldn't do. You'd be growing high quality. Pricing is like, when we're talking about profitability, like just adding a few cents to, like adding 25 cents to a product, that's like direct profits. Boom. It's not more work, not more cost, it's just more profit. So raising prices is a big part of the answer. So I don't know if you're tight with your price list, if you haven't changed it in a few years. Like, that's a mistake that I see too often. Growers, they're like, yeah, I feel good with these prices. It's like, yeah, but you know what? Like, it doesn't matter how you feel about the prices. If your customers are willing to pay more, you should be selling more. Because in the end, it's your life. Like, you'll have more money and you'll be able to do more stuff and feel less stress. And so, I don't know if you are somebody in this room that has that mentality of not wanting to raise the price because you don't want to be elitist, you don't want to be that guy. But in the end, it's your business, it's your life, it's your time, and then the neighbors, you know, they're raising their prices, and it's like, well. So anyway, that's a tough one. Yes.
Insects are a problem here in Arizona, and like in my case, I use the model, but it's fairly expensive. Do you know any kind of organic?
Insect nets. We use a lot of insect nets. It really depends on the crop, but yeah, a lot of our crops are under insect nets. That's a number one solution, and then if that doesn't work, then we have, depending on the insect, we'll have different, you know, bio pesticides that we'll use. Neem is one. You know, there's a few others. And insect nets, they really work a lot.
What's like the biggest thing that carries you through your, I guess, your winter season? Like how?
Time off. That really carries me all the way to spring. And when I started farming, that was the whole purpose of it, to get our time off. And then we started winter farming, and then started to write books, and then working year round and all of that. But how can I answer your question more seriously? Because you guys are reverse. You guys, it's your summer. Our summer is your winter. But honestly, if anyone is not taking at least 5 weeks off the farm, I think that's a mistake. 5 weeks for me is like the minimum cutoff period where you need to step away from the farm, step away from all the problems of the farm, just kind of get a fresh mind, do something else. Then you come back, you know, just like rest a little bit, do something else. And then when you come back, you're fresh, you're pep. You start with your annual crop plan, and then you order your seeds, you get everything in motion, you get it done. And then you try to go through the whole season without burning out until you get to rest. It's really like one season at a time. Yes?
Your 5 people that you have on your 2 acres, do you keep them on full time all year round?
No, we don't. Yeah. Like we at our farm, again, it's a very different climate. Like we're in the Northeast, we're in Quebec. Like we're the caribous. You know? It's like, we stop mid-November. We will do a few markets with, you know, Christmas markets, but everything is kind of stopped. We do a few sales, and then we'll reopen the nursery in mid-February. And so the crew gets in around late April. Mid-April, we'll have a few people, and then late April, the whole crew is there until November.
Do you try and have return crew, or do you hire new people every year?
I don't want to get in trouble here on this table, okay? So what I've found is that, and again, this is very personal, like the third season of somebody lacks the